Chapter 562. Untitled. Lin Chia stood frozen like a statue. What did you draw? Nix's voice came from above. Supernatural fertility. Lin Chia almost bit his tongue saying those 4 words. Nix in the sky fell silent for a long time and finally called out a name. Merlin. Got it. Merlin sighed and his magic staff slammed heavily onto the ground, creating a blindingly large white magic circle beneath his feet, enveloping the entire courtyard. Rich magical elements exploded around Merlin, and the gusting wind billowed his wizard's robe. He pressed down on his large pointed hat, murmuring a deep and obscure incantation. His deep-set eyes erupted with an unprecedented blinding light. Time magic. Cicada's cry rewind. He raised his staff again and slammed it down hard on the ground. The white rotating magic circle beneath him suddenly paused, then began to rotate slowly and steadily in the opposite direction. Hiss. The piercing sound of cicadas echoed in the air. As the cicada's cry rang out, time around Lin Chia began to flow backward. The words, supernatural fertility, that had been floating in the air actually drifted back into the magic circle, and Lin Chia's previously gloomy expression transformed back to shock, then to tense anticipation. Time rewound by 10 seconds. Lin Chia felt a moment of dizziness and in the blink of an eye he found himself standing in the courtyard again. Before him floated the ability wheel, still quietly hovering and yet to start spinning, as if the last 10 seconds had never happened. Lin Chia stared blankly for a moment, then turned to Merlin beside him, his eyes filled with confusion. Didn't he just draw supernatural fertility? Why had the wheel returned to its original state? Lord Merlin. Merlin smiled, moving his hand away from his hat, just about to say something when a strand of hair swayed down from the gap in his hat. Merlin's expression froze. He pressed his hat down tightly again, cleared his throat and said, just a simple time magic. I can use magic to deceive this asylum and rewind a small fragment of time back to 10 seconds ago, so you can redraw Nix's ability. Lin Chia's eyes immediately lit up. So if he drew an ability he wasn't satisfied with, he could use time magic to reset? Lord Merlin, if you do this, don't you need to pay some price? Lin Chia glanced thoughtfully at the hair on Merlin's head. Merlin's expression became a bit strange. He silently hid his hand behind his back and said seriously, are you questioning the abilities of the god of magic? It's just a rewind of 10 seconds. Even if there is some cost, it isn't very significant. Moreover, this is a transaction between Lord Nix and me. You don't need to feel any psychological pressure. If you need to rewind time, you can just tell me directly. That's right, my child, you can continue to redraw my ability no matter how many times. Nix's gentle voice came from the sky. Hearing the words, no matter how many times, the corner of Merlin's mouth twitched slightly, and a look of helplessness appeared in his eyes. All right, then I'll draw again. Lin Chia nodded and spun the wheel once more. The wheel floating in the air began to spin rapidly, the pointer sweeping past dazzling abilities, finally stopping in one area. Star Shatter. Lin Chia's eyes brightened slightly. This ability seemed quite good. Again. Nix's voice came again. Lin Chia was taken aback. After hesitating for a moment he said, Mother, actually I think this one is also okay. Not enough again. Nix's voice brooked no refusal. Merlin's mouth twitched and his staff struck the ground again, the cicada's cry sounding once more as time began to rewind. Moments later, Lin Chia found himself back at the time when the wheel was about to spin. He reached out to turn the wheel. Dim eye. Again. The cicada's cry sounded again. Nightfall. No again. Dark night flicker. Again. Nix's voice continued to ring out. Every time Lin Chia announced the name of the ability he drew, she would shake her head and decisively demand another draw. Even when Lin Chia drew abilities he thought were quite good, they were still rejected. Poor Merlin could only activate time magic, rewinding time again and again. Each time he struck the staff his hat would loosen a little. After repeating this over 30 times, even Lin Chia felt somewhat numb. He didn't understand what Nix wanted him to draw. The last 1%. The 42nd time. Lin Chia numbly spun the wheel, his gaze drifting slightly to the side. Staring at the wheel for so long made him a bit dizzy. This time the pointer passed over, supernatural fertility, and slowly stopped at that mysterious black area. 1%. Unknown. Lin Chia was taken aback. What did you draw? Nix's voice remained patient. I don't know. Lin Chia shook his head. It says unknown. As soon as he finished speaking, several pop-up windows suddenly flashed before Lin Chia. Drawn Nix's unknown ability analyzing. Analysis progress 1%, 23%, 51%, 79%, 96%, 100%. Analysis complete. Detected the essence of the night, unnamed. Lin Chia stared at these lines of text, stunned for a moment, then continued, It says this is the unnamed essence of the night. Upon hearing these words, Nix seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. All right, let's go with this. No need to change it anymore. Merlin looked as if he had been pardoned. Lin Chia gazed at the three words, unnamed, floating before him. Although he didn't know what it was, he still reached out to touch the surface of the words. It quickly transformed into a stream of light and surged into Lin Chia's body. At that moment, Lin Chia felt his mind go blank, as if a vast amount of information flooded into his brain, while a strange warmth flowed through his body, transforming him. Countless black threads emerged from his skin, weaving in the air like a black cocoon, enveloping him entirely. Lin Chia's presence suddenly vanished from the psychiatric hospital. Nearby, a few caretakers who were happily eating snacks suddenly froze. What happened? Why did Chia turn into an egg? Li Yifei asked in confusion. Hong Yan silently licked her lips. Chapter 563. Zhou Ping and Nikes. The outside world. Nix looked at Lin Chia wrapped in a black cocoon, a satisfied expression appearing in her eyes. Then, as if sensing something, she raised her head to look at the sky. Ding! A sword light flew in from the distance. Zhou Ping, still in the process of transformation, felt the sudden emergence of a new divine pressure, and his expression changed. This divine pressure was even more terrifying than the combined might of Xiao and Set that he had faced before. Although it was only a part of the soul, the power of the laws involved was already close to the level of a creator god. At his current state, he was absolutely no match for the opponent. Even if he hadn't begun his transformation, he still wouldn't be able to defeat her. Her aura was too strong. Zhou Ping's gaze fell on the woman in the black dress standing on the ground. He could clearly feel the surging night laws emanating from her, and he sensed Lin Chia's presence within the black cocoon opposite her. Furrowing his brows tightly without any hesitation, he charged toward Lin Chia with his sword drawn. His figure transformed into a beam of sword light, landing before the black cocoon where Lin Chia was. Facing Nix, the long sword in his hand hummed, exuding a chilling and terrifying sword law. He stared at Nix, his eyes filled with a clear sword intent. He was warning her. Although he knew he was unlikely to defeat this woman, he still had to reveal his sword. He wanted Nix to know that even if he couldn't win against her, he could still inflict harm. He was like a dying beast, choosing to show its fierce claws to a powerful enemy even when pushed to the brink. Because behind him there were cubs that needed his protection. Nix quietly watched this scene, a hint of softness appearing in her eyes, her lips curling slightly. After her healing progress reached 95%, she had seen this young man in a black shirt wielding a sword through the divine mental hospital. She knew he was Lin Chia's teacher and that Lin Chia had received much care from him. The teacher of her child was one of their own. You don't need to be so tense. I am his mother. I won't harm him, Nix said softly, pointing at Lin Chia still in the cocoon. Zhou Ping, with his sword intent already raised, froze in place upon hearing this. Mother? Zhou Ping scrutinized Nix, his expression somewhat strange. Lin Chia's mother is a Greek goddess? He doesn't have my bloodline, but he is my child, Nix explained, seeing through Zhou Ping's doubts. So it's not by blood. No wonder. Zhou Ping glanced back at the black cocoon behind him, confirming that Lin Chia's presence was very stable and posed no danger. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly sheathed his sword. Is he your agent? Zhou Ping asked. He had already experienced this familiar night ability through Lin Chia, and combined with Lin Chia's dual divine agent status, it was not difficult to deduce the identity of the noblewoman before him. Divine number 043, Goddess of Night Nix. With that, it could be basically confirmed that this woman indeed had no malicious intent toward Lin Chia. Nix shook her head. He is my child, that's all. Why are you here? I'm leaving. I want to say goodbye to him and give him a little gift. Oh. Zhou Ping nodded slightly. The air suddenly fell into silence. Bang. A cloud of blood mist erupted from Zhou Ping, transforming into white threads that gradually disappeared into the air. The transformation was still ongoing. Zhou Ping frowned slightly. He glanced at Nix, then turned and walked in another direction. Where are you going? Nix suddenly spoke up. Zhou Ping stopped, calmly saying, There's a rat hidden in this city that I need to flush out. Are you talking about that god who is secretly hiding and conducting a national curse? A smile appeared on Nix's lips. You don't need to worry about him. This concerns the national fortune of my great Xia. I cannot ignore it, Zhou Ping frowned and replied. Nix shook her head, turning to look in the direction of Great Xia. A few star traces flickered in her eyes as she slowly spoke. You misunderstand. What I mean is, even if you don't deal with him, he cannot shake the national fortune of Great Xia. Some things you cannot see, but I can. Zhou Ping stood frozen in place. Professional matters should be handled by professionals. Right now, even if you go and fight that god desperately, you may not be able to kill him, Nix continued. If you trust me, stay here and make a deal with me. A deal. Zhou Ping hesitated for a moment but still stopped. He didn't trust Nix, he trusted Lin Chia in the cocoon. Since Lin Chia chose to believe in this goddess of night, he was willing to trust her once. Moreover, what she said was indeed true. With less than a quarter of his body remaining, even if he pursued that god, he wouldn't be able to kill him. What kind of deal? You are this child's teacher and the first human in the world to possess your own laws. I admire you, Nix said calmly. If you simply transform and completely disappear from this world, it would be a pity. She turned to look at Lin Chia in the cocoon, a gentle expression in her eyes. After a pause she continued. And this child would be very sad. Zhou Ping's eyes narrowed slightly. Do you have a way to stop the transformation? No, Nix shook her head. Transformation occurs because your mortal body cannot bear the weight of the laws. No one can stop this process. In other words, your death is a self-destructive process caused by your own flaws, and it is unavoidable. Zhou Ping fell silent, a look of disappointment flashing in his eyes. Nix continued, During this process, your body will be destroyed because it cannot withstand the sword laws. Once your body disappears, your soul consciousness will uncontrollably be absorbed into the sword laws you created, merging completely with them. This is also part of the transformation. Thus, everything about you will vanish from this world, and you will become a part of the operational laws of this world, with no possibility of escaping the laws. What I can do is consume soul power to weave a piece of night for you, allowing your consciousness not to be absorbed by the laws, letting you remain in this world in another way, falling into eternal slumber. Eternal slumber? Zhou Ping frowned slightly. What's the difference from transformation? The difference is that after transformation you can never return, not even to the cycle of reincarnation in Great Xia. However, leaving your consciousness in this world still allows for a return to the cycle with a possibility of coming back. Nix paused. That is the possibility I can offer you. Chapter 564. The Invitation from Nixus. Possibility. Zhou Ping furrowed his brows, lost in thought. What do I need to do? Nix looked into Zhou Ping's eyes and slowly spoke. I need a sword. A sword. After I return to Olympus, there may be some unpleasant events. Nix said calmly. Right now I am only in a spiritual state without a divine body, making it inconvenient to fight them. So, I need a sword that can slay gods. Zhou Ping raised an eyebrow. You want to kill the gods of Greece? A faint killing intent radiated from Nix's eyes. Blood debts must be repaid with blood. Those outer gods are not good beings. Zhou Ping said seriously. 12 years ago, Gaia had invaded the Great Xia, directly leading to the destruction of Tsongnan City. 2 years ago Poseidon, Hades and others invaded again. If it weren't for the return of the gods of Great Xia, it would have likely been another disaster. In the eyes of Great Xia, the Greek gods had long been at the top of the blacklist. I agree. In a way, this is also a good thing for Great Xia. Zhou Ping pondered. Nix gazed at Zhou Ping. I have seen your sword that slays gods. It is the most stunning sword I have seen in 100 years. I am the creator god of the night, And you are the sword immortal of humanity. If we join forces, Olympus will face an unprecedented twilight of the gods. Will you join me in forging this second sword? The sword is called revenge. Dressed in a black gown, Nyx stood in the blood pool of the mysterious corpse, her deep eyes igniting with two flickers of crimson light, the fire of revenge burning fiercely. She stood quietly waiting for Zhou Ping's response. Zhou Ping was still contemplating. Time passed second by second. Inside the asylum for gods, Li Yifei and others waited in the corridor, watching the immobile black cocoon in the courtyard, yawning. It's been 10 minutes, why is there still no movement? He wondered aloud. Zhu remained silent for a moment. We probably have to wait a long time. When my mother gave birth to me, it took a long time. Almost there. Beside them, the black-eyed figure wearing a top hat adjusted the brim and spoke slowly. I can see it, he's about to come out. 3, 2, 1. Crack. As the black-eyed figure finished speaking, a fine crack suddenly appeared on the black cocoon, followed by more and more cracks, intertwining like a large web over the cocoon. A hand reached out from the crack, tearing apart the surrounding black cocoon, and then a figure draped in a black coat slowly emerged. Lin Jie stopped, his tightly closed eyes slowly opening. In his eyes, a flash of night and stars identical to Nyx's flickered by. His gaze was incredibly deep. He lowered his head, looking at his palm, and after a long moment of contemplation, confusion appeared in his eyes. Director, it seems you have succeeded. Merlin raised an eyebrow, sensing the change in Lin Jie's aura. I feel like there hasn't been much change. Lin Jie's expression was somewhat strange. After breaking free from the cocoon, his realm hadn't improved at all, his mental power hadn't increased, and his body felt the same as before with no noticeable changes. The only difference might be that his temperament seemed a bit deeper. I'm not very clear on what Lord Nyx has prepared. You can ask him directly. Merlin said. Lin Jie nodded, and with a flicker he disappeared from the asylum. Seeing him finally leave, Merlin breathed a sigh of relief, reached up to adjust his hat and cautiously moved it slightly. Hair fell like black snowflakes cascading down. Merlin's mouth twitched slightly as he trembled, reaching up to touch his head, and another large clump of hair fell out. The hair on the top of his head was particularly sparse, resembling a standard Mediterranean hairstyle. Feeling the sensation at his fingertips, Merlin stood frozen like a statue. After a long time, that lonely figure let out a long sigh. Starting today, I should drink some sesame paste before bed. Crack. Outside, the black cocoon enveloping Lin Jie gradually shattered. Lin Jie pried open the outer shell of the black cocoon and stepped out in his coat. His gaze fell on Zhou Ping and he suddenly froze. Sword Saint. Zhou Ping turned to look at Lin Jie, keenly sensing the change in his aura, a hint of surprise flashing across his brow. Seeing Lin Jie, Nyx smiled with relief and spoke. It seems you have successfully completed the fusion, my child. Mother. Lin Jie glanced at Zhou Ping, then at Nyx. The two seemed to show no signs of hostility, as if they had just finished a conversation, leaving him somewhat astonished. How did these two end up together? Mother, what exactly did you give me? Lin Jie asked in confusion. Nyx smiled slightly. This is the essence of the night. Before I became the creator god and established the Greek divine realm, it was the soil I used to nurture the laws of the night. Soil for nurturing laws? Exactly. Nyx spoke slowly. Before I mastered the laws of the night, all my divine power and all the abilities you just drew were nurtured from it. So, if I obtain the essence of the night, does that mean I have acquired all the abilities I just drew? Lin Jie exclaimed in shock. To be precise, you have obtained their seeds. As you gradually master this essence of the night, they will naturally be mastered by you. Nyx said earnestly, but its most precious aspect is that it can help you nurture your own laws. Lin Jie stood there in a daze. If it were before, he might not have understood what nurturing laws truly meant, but after witnessing Zhou Ping ascend to godhood, struggling to leave a mark of sword laws on the path, he finally grasped the importance of laws. Every law in this world has its own master. Even if he could eventually break through that ceiling and step into the divine realm without a matching law, he would merely be a more powerful human ceiling. Currently, the only known method for Lin Jie to acquire laws was to carve a mark on the path with a sword, just like Zhou Ping. But not everyone could be like Zhou Ping. This path was too difficult, too uncertain. And now Nix had prepared another path for him, a smoother one. Nurturing his own laws. With this essence of the night, as long as the opportunity is right, there is a chance to nurture a law that belongs solely to him. Although the probability is very slim, if he truly succeeds, it would mean he has the qualifications to become a god. This is the final gift Nix prepared for him. The gift of godhood. Chapter 565. Zhou Ping transforms. This gift is too precious. The soil that can nurture laws is perhaps scarce throughout the world. If other divine realms were to learn of this news, they would likely fight over it. Yet Nix has kept it hidden until now, even going so far as to pluck the hair from Merlin to leave it for Lin Chia. This is the most precious thing she can give to Lin Chia. Thank you, mother. Lin Chia stood in silence for a long time, burying all his words of gratitude deep in his heart, and sincerely uttered these few words. To him, Nix was no longer just a simple patient. She had truly become his mother. Even though it all began with the simple word mother, now this kind and innocent lie had turned into reality. Between mother and son, Lin Chia did not want to express too much gratitude. All of Nix's kindness towards him was deeply etched in his heart. Nix smiled, her eyes filled with affection. Zhou Ping, have you made up your mind? She turned her head and asked Zhou Ping. Zhou Ping quietly looked at Lin Chia and after a moment nodded. I've made up my mind. My sword can be lent to you, he said. Zhou Ping hesitated primarily because he did not fully trust Nix. However, when Lin Chia emerged from his cocoon and heard the conversation between the two, he chose to help Nix once. From the preciousness of the soil she gifted Lin Chia, Zhou Ping could confirm that Nix truly regarded Lin Chia as her own child. Such a pure and great mother deserved his sword. Lin Chia looked at the two in confusion. Although he did not know what they had discussed in his absence, it seemed they had reached some sort of agreement. The details of the agreement were unclear to Lin Chia, but he believed that Nix would never betray Zhou Ping. A Greek creator god and a human sword immortal. Even though they had never met before or even heard of each other, they had formed a united front based on their trust in Lin Chia. Trust is sometimes such a wondrous thing. Nix nodded, lifted her black skirt and gently bowed to Zhou Ping. Thank you. Zhou Ping took a deep breath and plunged the long sword, primal abyss, into the ground beneath him. He gripped the hilt tightly and the clear sword intent in his eyes surged once more. Ding! The crisp and resonant sound of the sword echoed between heaven and earth, as the rolling sword energy mixed with the laws of the sword surged forth from the void. These sword energies swirled around Zhou Ping like waves, transforming into a terrifying vortex that poured into the primal abyss sword in his hand, the raging wind causing his black cloak to flutter wildly. Sword intent, sword energy and sword laws all surged madly into the sword. Lin Chia saw this scene and shouted against the howling wind, Sword Saint, what are you going to do? Amidst the sword energy storm, Zhou Ping's figure gradually became blurred as he calmly spoke. My body is nearing its limit, but I can still unleash one more sword. I will seek justice for the great Xia against Olympus. I want them to know that this sword comes from humanity. Boom. The sword energy around him surged once more, transforming into a vast ocean of sword energy. Blood mist erupted from Zhou Ping's body, dissipating into white strands in the air. His body, amidst the sword energy, resembled an old photograph gradually fading away, quickly diminishing. His chest became increasingly transparent, his left hand gripping the sword had already vanished, and his head began to blur. He was about to disappear. Lin Chia, I won't say goodbye to you. Possible, perhaps we will meet again. At that time, you may not need to become strong, but I hope you can always be by each other's side like you are now. I am leaving. Zhou Ping's voice gradually weakened, his body nearly completely dissipated. Finally, he turned to look at the woman in the black dress, his eyes radiating bright sword light. Nix, take this sword, and for me, pierce through Olympus. Bang. The last remnant of his body transformed into strands of white law, dissipating into the air. Between heaven and earth, there was a profound silence. Today, the great Xia sword immortal Zhou Ping transcended amidst the mist. The last wisp of sword intent rolling between heaven and earth surged into the primal abyss, sword planted in the ground, the sword body emanating a terrifying sword light, violently trembling as endless killing intent surged forth. At that moment Nyx, standing in the pool of blood, stepped forward, reaching out to grasp the last few strands of white law, her eyes bursting with astonishing divine might. An extreme darkness instantly enveloped her palm. The strands of white law she grasped twisted desperately but could not escape Nyx's grip. She murmured, and the dark starry skirt billowed, her hand forcefully pulling back. The last drifting strand of white law once again coalesced in Nyx's palm, transforming into a translucent heart like glass, tightly suspended in the air. This was Zhou Ping's heart. Although this heart had stopped beating, pure flowing light still coursed over it, radiating an enchanting brilliance. Nyx used her other hand to grasp her skirt, pulling hard to tear off a large piece of night. This piece of night gently covered the exterior of the glass heart, like a fabric without thickness, wrapping it up and completely isolating it from the outside world. The flowing light was concealed in the darkness, not revealing a hint. The law of darkness sealed this heart completely. After doing all this, a pale color appeared on Nyx's face, and the torn skirt did not regenerate. For her, who was still in a spiritual state, using her power to conceal Zhou Ping's perception of the sword laws was quite taxing, and this kind of damage to her soul would not heal in just a few years or decades. But in the end she still fulfilled her promise. She held the heart, her expression solemn and grave, and slowly walked up to Lin Chia. "Mother, I made some deals with your teacher, but rest assured his soul consciousness has been preserved in this heart and will not dissipate. You will take it back to the great Xia and perhaps someone can restore his life," Nyx said earnestly. Lin Chia extended his hands, carefully accepting the heart and holding it close to his chest. "Mother, are you leaving too?" Nyx turned, her eyes quietly gazing in a certain direction, and nodded. "Yes, the old grievances have come, time for reckoning." Lin Chia looked into her eyes, took a deep breath, and 1,000 words surged to his lips, but they only transformed into a few simple words. "Mother, safe travels. Take care of yourself. Once everything is settled, I will come back to find you," Nyx said, looking at him with a slight smile. Then she turned, drew the sword with a menacing sword intent from the ground, and stepped forward. The black skirt billowed like a curtain of night, enveloping the entire sky. Nyx, wielding the sword of divine slaying, had flames of vengeance burning fiercely in her eyes, dyeing a corner of the eastern night sky a deep crimson. Chapter 566. The Third Sword. After Nike's figure vanished, the night that enveloped everyone gradually faded into the eastern sky. A hazy mist reappeared in their view, wrapping around several people. Bai Li Pangpang, Chao Yuan, Shen Qingzhu, Jialan Jiang Er, and Qingyu approached Lin Chia from different directions through the mist. They stared at the heart in Lin Chia's hand, falling into silence. They had all witnessed the scene just moments ago. "Chia," she said, "that the Sword Saint still has a chance to return. Is that true?" Bai Li Pangpang asked. Lin Chia was silent for a moment. "Mother wouldn't lie. If she says it's true, then it is." The expressions of the others softened slightly. Only Lin Chia continued to gaze at the sliver of night in the east, like a statue, unmoving. "What are you thinking about?" Jialan asked softly. "I'm thinking about the name of our team." "Name?" Upon hearing this, the others turned to look at Lin Chia. "Have you thought of one?" "Maybe." Lin Chia looked at the corner of the night sky in the east, then lowered his gaze to the heart in his palm, slowly saying, "Our team was born from despair, emerging from the darkest times. Along the way we have gained and lost. Our existence is not for merit nor for fame, but for the places we can see and hear, free from disaster, evil, injustice, and sacrifice. The world is too vast and there are too many beings. We cannot manage it, nor do we wish to. Let the world be destroyed or the gods be enraged." A few streaks of starlight flickered in Lin Chia's eyes as a pitch-black night began to spread rapidly across the sky above them, covering several kilometers in the blink of an eye. The world darkened once more. Night falls. This night was his forbidden realm, his domain. He raised his hand, pointing at the night above. "As long as I am under this night, those I cherish shall have peace for eternity. Those I oppose shall be obliterated. I want our fate to be in our own hands. I want us to be invincible. One day I will make this night a forbidden ground for the gods. Here we will be our own gods. Our name is Nightfall." As Lin Chia's voice fell, everyone stood frozen in place. After a long while they finally came to their senses. The fifth special team of the Great Xia, the Nightfall team. Sounds good, Chao Yuan said thoughtfully. I admit, it's a bit better than my overlord name, Bai Li Pang shrugged. Just a little. Lin Chia turned to the others. What do you think? Whatever you say, Chia, I agree, Jialan said, her eyes shining. Nightfall as a forbidden ground for the gods. Shin Qingzhu nodded. Very imposing, I have no objections. I have no objections either, and Qingyu nodded. Jiang Er, floating nearby, couldn't speak but nodded in agreement. Seeing that everyone had no objections, Lin Chia said, in that case our team name will be Nightfall. When we return to the Great Xia, I will formally submit the application. With a wave of his hand, clouds surged around them, lifting everyone up as they chased after the distant shattered city. Lin Chia's gaze swept over the city and suddenly he froze in place. What's wrong? Chao Yuan noticed Lin Chia's unusual behavior and asked. Lin Chia was stunned for a long time, a hint of bitterness flashing in his eyes. So that's how it is. I only just realized. What did you discover? Bai Li Pang asked in confusion. Don't you find it strange? Lin Chia extended his hand, pointing at the shattered city flying in the mist, slowly speaking. This city was severed from the Great Xia by the wind god. It carries the raging winds moving towards Egypt. But the wind god has long since left. Why is this city still flying? And it continues to fly towards home. Everyone was taken aback, turning to look at the massive city flying in the mist. After a moment, disbelief appeared in their eyes. In the hazy mist, at the base of the enormous city that blotted out the sun, a sword was supporting the entire city, flying slowly yet steadily. Dragon Elephant Sword. That was Zhou Ping's sword. In that moment, Lin Chia finally understood where Zhou Ping's original sword had gone. He had thought the Dragon Elephant Sword had shattered during Zhou Ping's battle against the gods, but he never expected that Zhou Ping's sword had always been there. This sword had been supporting the entire city since the first time he repelled the wind god, despite being gravely injured. Even when his consciousness had blurred, even when he faced three gods empty-handed, even when he transformed into the Tao and vanished without a trace, this sword still showed no signs of wavering. His sword had been carrying the burden all along. This was the third sword Zhou Ping had struck out from the very beginning. The sword of returning home. The seven stood at the base of the magnificent city, looking up at the sword that bore the city forward. The sadness they had suppressed in their hearts surged uncontrollably. Their eyes reddened. After a long while, Lin Chia gazed at the sword that bore the city, deeply bowing, his voice trembling slightly. I humbly invite my teacher to return home. Within the shattered city, amidst the mountains, a phantom black figure slowly stood up. Beneath his feet lay a complex and eerie pattern. Amon held a black scepter, gazing at the grand pattern below, a cold smile curling at the corners of his mouth. The curse of national fortune is about to be completed. Those two useless ones, Xiao and Sate, ultimately failed. But that human is already dead. The god who commands the night has left, and now no one can stop me. Cursing the national fortune, I will seize this city again, and everything will return to the right track. He slowly raised the scepter in his hand. A chilling and evil divine power surged around him, a bone-chilling aura spreading at the edge of the city. Boom! The bottom of the scepter in his hand slammed heavily onto the pattern. A pitch-black ripple swiftly spread out, sweeping over numerous peaks, as if a stone had been dropped into a pond, disturbing the entire dragon vein's fortune. There are multiple dragon veins in the Great Xia, but each one can influence the national fortune in the dark. Knowledge and power related to the national fortune have gradually faded over time, and there are not many who understand how to utilize the fortune to attack. Amon is one of them. His curse can influence the entire national fortune of the Great Xia through a single dragon vein, just like a drop of ink in a pot, quickly staining the entire Great Xia. Chapter 567. Divine War Sea Region. What is that? Just as Lin Chia and the others returned to the shattered city, they sensed the sudden emergence of an evil aura, and their expressions changed simultaneously. He turned his head to look at the mountains shrouded in darkness in the distance, his brow furrowing tightly. God. And Qingyu said uncertainly. How can there be another god? Bai Li Pangpang exclaimed in disbelief. Didn't we already deal with the wind god and the god of yellow sand? How can another one just pop up from the mountains? He spoke with frustration. The Sword Saint and Chia's mother aren't here. What should we do now? Hearing this, everyone froze for a moment, then looked at Lin Chia with strange expressions. Lin Chia, what are you looking at me for? Chia, we can only rely on you now, Bai Li Pangpang said seriously. Your mother is so powerful, your father must be a god too, right? If not, any aunts or uncles will do. Hurry up and bring them out to wreak havoc. Lin Chia. What do you take me for? A second-generation god. Lin Chia couldn't help but speak up. I'm just an ordinary person from an ordinary family. That mother you mentioned is someone I recognized. How could I have so many godly aunts and uncles? After searching the entire mental hospital, the next one expected to be discharged was Mei Lin, but his treatment progress was still lacking, and he definitely wouldn't be out in the short term. Moreover, even if he did come out, fighting other gods in a spiritual state would be a case of inflicting 10,000 damage to the enemy while suffering 30,000 in return. What should we do now? Chao Yuan frowned and asked. Lin Chia gazed at the mountains cloaked in darkness for a moment, then turned to look in another direction. At this moment, the shattered city had flown over a sea area, and the faint sound of waves echoed at the city's edge. Through the hazy mist, they could see the turbulent sea beneath them. Lin Chia closed his eyes, recalling the world map that had been imprinted in his mind before the mist descended, as well as the route they had taken. Using the direction of the sun, he deduced their location. They should now be in the East China Sea. This place isn't far from Daxia, he said. With our strength, we definitely can't fight that god. We can only hope for a few human powerhouses and the Night Watchers. I hope Commander Yi has prepared someone to pick us up. Daxia South Sea border. Boom boom boom. On the vast and boundless sea, endless waves and fierce winds roared under the dark sky. The seawater boiled as towering waves hundreds of meters high surged, swirling between whirlpools and undercurrents. The entire sea area had turned into a hellish battlefield. At this moment, on the edge of the land, dozens of night watchers cloaked in dark red stood above the sea level, charging toward the towering waves crashing toward the land. Each of these waves was over 100 meters high, and their numbers were terrifying, scattered around the coastline, covering a vast area. Once these waves reached the land, several cities along the coastline would be submerged in seawater. Boom! On the sea surface, various forbidden ruins erupted violently, shattering the towering waves into countless raindrops that poured down, washing over the land and cities behind them. In the salty rain, a soaked night watcher raised his sword, looking toward the direction of the incoming waves, a hint of fear flickering in his eyes. What kind of battle could cause such a commotion? Divine battle, another night watcher beside him said. About 700 nautical miles from here, four human powerhouses are engaged in battle with 4 outer gods. This should be the largest scale battle between humans and gods in history. Even 12 years ago, it couldn't compare to this. 12 years ago, the only invaders of Daxia were the Earth Mother Gaia and the trickster god Loki. 2 years ago, although many gods invaded, the battlefields were very scattered, and they were mostly probing and intimidating without the chaotic scenes like this. Only by witnessing the current scene could one truly appreciate the terror of the gods. And their battlefield was still over 700 nautical miles away. If their chaotic battle were on land within Daxia, half a province would likely have already turned to ruins. But those are 4 gods. Can the powerhouses win? He asked with some concern. His companion glanced at him, raised his hand and used his energy to shatter a massive wave, causing torrents of seawater to fall, soaking both of them again. That level of matter isn't something we should worry about. We just need to follow Commander Ye's orders and prevent these natural disasters from approaching the cities. All right. He sighed, tightly gripping the hilt of his sword. After a moment, he couldn't help but glance again at the direction of the incoming waves, worry evident in his eyes. Divine Battle Sea Area. In the gloomy sky, streaks of fierce lightning danced, and several figures clashed in the air, shattering the thick thunderclouds and creating several massive voids. Sunshine and rain appeared simultaneously over the sea area, with waves rolling and rising nearly 1,000 meters high, like towering water columns reaching for the sky. Beneath the sea surface, Massive deep-sea rocks flew into the air, resembling floating islands scattered beneath the sunlight and thunderclouds. Amidst the chaos and destruction, there was a hint of dreamlike beauty, like a magical and grand mottled oil painting. Bang bang bang. Several explosive sounds echoed like thunder across the heavens and earth, as a massive figure cloaked in golden Sanskrit, resembling an enraged Vajra, wielded a straight blade and crashed through several suspended deep-sea rocks like lightning. Each giant rock was struck with a nearly 100-meter-wide gap, and dense knife marks rapidly spread around the gap. Large chunks of shattered stone flew into the air but did not fall into the sea. Instead, they quietly hovered in the air. On the largest of the floating rocks, a figure draped in dark yellow cloth stood suspended. His eyes radiated brilliant divine light as he extended his hand, grasping at the rapidly flying golden figure. One of the 9 pillar gods of Egypt, the earth god, Geb. All the deep-sea rocks floating in the air, along with the fragmented stone debris, rapidly converged, forming a colossal rock hand that obscured the sky, reaching toward Yi Fan. Yi Fan's dark red cloak was already tattered, but his skin still emitted a faint golden Buddhist light. He stood in the air with his sword, letting out a low roar as his figure swelled several times. Moments later, a golden giant Buddha stood on the sea surface, hands clasped together, glaring angrily at the figure above him. The instant this golden Buddha appeared, the rolling seawater beneath him created layer upon layer of ripples, and a terrifying and powerful aura spread across the heavens and earth. Chapter 568. The Dilemma of the Ceiling. The Other Side. Beep beep beep. An electric scooter sped across the tumultuous sea, crashing through waves, dense seawater splashing onto the bright yellow helmet, dripping down and flowing into the sea along the edges of the windbreaker. With a crack, the scooter's headlights went dark. The headlights had short-circuited. Lu Wei frowned, an eerie orange light emanating from his palm. He slapped the dashboard of the scooter and the headlights flickered back to life, piercing through the dim sea surface and illuminating a bright path ahead. Under the sky above him, a woman dressed in a pure white gauze gown stood on a cloud, frowning as she watched the slow-moving delivery rider weaving through the waves. One of the 9 Egyptian gods, the sky god, Nut. What on earth? She murmured to herself. After hesitating for a moment, she spread her arms wide, the wind lifting her gauze gown. She whispered something softly, and a mysterious aura of law radiated from her. On the sea surface, Lu Wei seemed to sense something and twisted the throttle all the way. The electric scooter began to move slowly but steadily at a speed of 40 kilometers per hour, continuing to navigate the turbulent sea. At that moment, a flash of white light darted across the vast expanse of sea beneath him. Whoosh! In that instant, Lu Wei felt as if the entire world had flipped upside down. When he regained his senses, the sea beneath him had vanished, replaced by a vast blue sky. Below him was a bottomless abyss, dark clouds swirling. His world had been turned upside down. The scooter spun in midair, yet it did not advance an inch. A strong sense of weightlessness enveloped his mind, and the next moment he and the scooter plummeted from the great height. The howling wind rushed past Lu Wei's ears, nearly blowing off his helmet. He calmly scanned the high altitude beneath him, silently reaching into the small drawer beneath the scooter's dashboard, seemingly searching for something. A few seconds later, he pulled out a small yellow duck wearing sunglasses and a big gold chain. Like the small yellow ducks commonly found at street stalls, this one was light and small, topped with a coin-sized plastic propeller. However, unlike the others, this duck wore sunglasses and had a devilishly charming smile on its beak. Lu Wei nonchalantly pressed the small yellow duck onto his helmet. Then he took out a second small yellow duck and pressed it onto the scooter's handlebars. In midair, the propeller atop the yellow duck spun rapidly, and Lu Wei, along with the scooter, surprisingly hovered in the air. He twisted the scooter's throttle and it slowly moved toward the sky god standing on the clouds. Of course, in the air it didn't matter whether he twisted the throttle or not. The wheels were just spinning in place. But he felt that twisting the throttle was more satisfying. Watching this bizarre scene unfold, Nut stood frozen in place. Dark clouds churned. Drizzling rain fell from the clouds, drifting over the rolling waves. Guanzai, wearing a checkered shirt and a flat cap, looked up, gazing at the rain drifting through the air, lost in thought. A drop of rain fell toward him. Sizzle. Guanzai instinctively turned around and the drop of rain missed him, landing in the sea below, creating a small round hole in the surface. This round hole resembled a nail hole hammered into a wooden table fixed on the sea surface. No matter how the surrounding water churned, the hole remained eternally anchored in place. Guanzai's brow furrowed tightly. Drip, drip, drip. In the sky, the falling rain became denser, and the number of holes in the sea surface increased. This area of the sea had turned into a scarred landscape, with the rolling waves dotted with dense bullet holes left by the raindrops. He kept dodging the raindrops, but a few still landed on the brim of his cap, leaving behind wisps of white smoke in several round holes. He looked up at the sky and at the end of the rain, a half-formed silhouette of flowing water flickered into view. One of the 9 Egyptian gods, the rain goddess, Tefnut. The rain fell harder. Slowly, the rain drifted everywhere in the sky, leaving Guanzai with less and less space to move, and the number of holes on his body increased. He took a deep breath, a faint glow emanating from his eyes. His fingertips began to tap in the void, and a series of green characters appeared in the emptiness before him. The dense green characters flowed through the air like a tide, resembling a massive virtual screen, with dazzling lines of code reflecting in Guanzai's eyes, his pupils trembling at an astonishing speed. 2 seconds later, all the code before him vanished, replaced by a few lines of flickering characters. Filtering liquids with a single weight between 0.5 milligrams and 5 grams. Filtering complete. Physical engine modification in progress. Physical engine modification complete. A total of 34,172 target objects captured, gravity vector direction reversed. Whoosh. At the moment the last line of characters disappeared, all raindrops and splashes of seawater within a 10-kilometer radius around Guanzai bizarrely froze in midair, then began to slowly move upward toward the sky. In this area, all the liquids within Guanzai's selected target range had their gravity direction reversed, gradually accelerating upward. Within a 10-kilometer radius, the rain was rolling back up. The shadow hidden in the rain witnessed this scene, her eyes filled with disbelief. But the rain rolling back into the sky was beyond her control. With a flick of her fingertip, the rain completely froze in midair. At that moment, a speeding carriage crashed into the suspended rain curtain, and a virtual Chinese courtyard rapidly spread from the carriage's center, instantly absorbing all the rainwater into the Heart's Cape, vanishing without a trace. Guanzai was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the carriage. How did this old man end up here? Where's his opponent? He muttered in confusion. At this moment, inside the carriage, Master Chen sat behind a tea table holding a teacup in his palm, a bead of cold sweat trickling down his forehead as he stared warily at the slender girl in a green dress before him. "You seem quite nervous," the slender girl in green said with a gentle smile. "Are you afraid of me? Let me guess. You didn't expect me to breach your absolute defense so easily, did you?" One of the 9 Egyptian gods, the goddess of life, Isis. Chapter 569. McLaren in the Mist. Many deities can break into my Heart's Cape, but to come in so easily, this is the first time I've seen it. Chin Fuzi shook his head helplessly, slowly lifting the teapot in his hand to fill the empty cup in front of Aces with tea. The steaming hot tea poured into the porcelain cup, rising with a faint mist, while the emerald green tea leaves gently swirled in the cup, releasing a delicate fragrance. "Life will always find a way out," Aces said with a smile. She turned her head to look at the uniquely scenic Chinese courtyard outside the window, her jade-like fingers pointing to a low stone covered in grass. "Even if the cracks in this hard stone are narrow, they cannot stop the nourishment of life." As her words fell, a strange green sprout grew from the side of the cup that Chin Fuzi was holding. Chin Fuzi stood frozen in place. This porcelain cup had no gaps at all, but after the sprout emerged, fine cracks began to spread from the root, becoming denser as the sprout grew. Bang! A few seconds later, the cup in Chin Fuzi's hand exploded, the sprout having grown to the size of a thumb, gently falling to the ground at his feet. Scalding tea splashed onto Chin Fuzi's robe, soaking a patch of it. He silently stared at the fragments of the cup in his hand, a hint of bitterness appearing in his eyes. "This was my favorite tea set." "Oh, I'm truly sorry about that." Acey's smile grew even brighter. Under the overcast sky, the speeding carriage on the surface of the sea began to visibly sprout dense vegetation. Sprouts, grass roots, flower buds. A variety of plants grew at an astonishing speed, quickly covering the carriage completely. A few seconds later, a loud explosion was heard as the entire carriage shattered from the center. Fortunately, this time the young scholar was not on the carriage. Chinfuzi had left him by the seaside before coming here. In battles of this level, being caught up in it would mean certain death. At the moment the carriage shattered, Chinfuzi, dressed in a gray robe, was thrown out, blood staining his chest, and he plunged headfirst into the rolling waves. On the other side, a girl in a green dress stepped through the void, slowly turning her head to look at the golden Buddha figure battling the earth god Geb. After hesitating for a moment, she took a step forward, arriving above the golden Buddha figure. Almost at the instant the carriage exploded and Chinfuzi was injured, Yi Fan sensed the terrifying aura emanating from this goddess of life. Her presence was the most powerful and robust among the 4 Egyptian gods. Among the 4 human powerhouses present, no one could compare to her. Of all the people Yi Fan had seen, the only one who might have the strength to defeat her was Zhou Ping. But Zhou Ping was not here. Seeing Chinfuzi injured, Yi Fan felt a heaviness in his heart. He looked up at Acey's above him, murmuring softly as a massive golden hand shot toward her body like lightning. The hand compressed the air, producing a thunderous explosion, and brilliant Buddha light swirled as the palm's pattern rapidly enlarged in Acey's eyes. She snorted coldly, extending her own pale, jade-like hand to strike back. At the moment the 2 hands collided in midair, a howling gale instantly compressed the sea water below, creating a circular pit several kilometers wide, which then spun rapidly, forming a bottomless whirlpool. The Buddha light surrounding Yi Fan shattered inch by inch. He let out a muffled grunt, his form returning to its original size as he staggered back 2 steps. In contrast, the girl in the green dress, Acey's, merely took a gentle step back. Yi Fan looked at her with an extremely serious expression. Boom! In the next moment 2 massive deep-sea boulders flew from beneath Yi Fan, creating 2 towering waves that crashed toward him. Each of these boulders was the size of an island, their surfaces uneven and emitting a dim glow, bearing down on Yi Fan with terrifying force. Yi Fan swiftly sheathed his straight knife, his palms radiating blinding Buddha light as he forcefully braced against the 2 rapidly approaching island-sized boulders, his muscles bulging as explosive power surged forth. He managed to hold the 2 boulders at his sides. Clenching his teeth, he resembled an enraged Vajra, every muscle in his body trembling. One earth god was already enough of a headache. Now, with the addition of the overwhelmingly powerful Acey's, this had completely exceeded his capacity to cope. This was a joint attack from 2 of the 9 pillars gods. Acey's green dress fluttered gently in the wind as she expressionlessly walked on the rolling sea, approaching Yi Fan, who was struggling to support the 2 islands, her fingertip lightly raised. At that moment, a faint electrical sound came from Yi Fan's waist, as if a signal was being connected. The pixelated walkie-talkie lit up with a red light once more. A cool female voice came from the walkie-talkie. "I'm here." Upon hearing this voice, Yi Fan was momentarily stunned, then he couldn't help but smile. The sound of rushing water came from afar. Acey's frowned, sensing something, and turned to look toward the edge of the sea. At the edge of this apocalyptic sea, endless water seemed to come alive, transforming into countless tiny pixel particles that gathered on the surface, stitching together into massive pillars that plunged into the seabed. Above these pillars, a pixelated wide avenue rapidly formed. A high bridge rising above the sea was being constructed from the mist. The appearance of this high bridge instantly captured nearly everyone's attention. "What is that?" Guan was filled with confusion upon seeing this scene. A high bridge. Lu Wuwei, flying in the sky with a little yellow duck, was taken aback. A high bridge coming from the mist? How is that possible? Acey stood on the surface of the sea, frowning as she gazed at the rapidly constructed pixelated high bridge. After a moment her gaze fell on the far end of the bridge, still shrouded in hazy mist. There it seemed something was approaching. A low engine sound faintly emerged from the mist. A deep gray, apocalyptic painted McLaren burst through the thick fog, its modified engine roaring like a beast under the dark sky. It crashed through the towering waves, rolling toward the high bridge, racing toward the other side of the bridge like lightning. In the driver's seat of the McLaren, a figure draped in a tattered black cloak gripped the steering wheel with one hand, while the other held a pixelated black walkie-talkie, calmly watching the end of the high bridge, where the goddess in the green dress stood. The window rolled down slightly and the wild sea breeze rushed in through the gap, blowing the tattered black hood back a bit, revealing a few strands of silvery long hair that fell over her shoulder, gently swaying. Chapter 570, Bandit. Xining City. First People's Hospital. A figure leaned on a cane, slowly walking out of the inpatient department. He glanced back at the towering inpatient building behind him, and after a moment, walked toward the other side of the road. He was He Lin, the ninth seat of the original Believers. He had barely taken 2 steps when suddenly, a wave of inexplicable heat surged from his palm, as if someone had stuffed a freshly boiled hot egg into his hand, causing him to instantly open his palm. He was taken aback, and then a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. In the center of his right palm, a spear mark began to emerge. The spear of judgment and oath. The president has returned. He murmured to himself. South China Sea. The sudden appearance of the apocalyptic painted McLaren left the other human powerhouses utterly shocked. They had never heard of such a powerful being hidden in the mist, possessing pixel-like forbidden ruins. Aces narrowed her eyes slightly, lightly extending her palm toward the approaching overpass. Instantly vibrant green plants filled with life burst forth from beneath the McLaren, crawling out from the cracks of the pixelated stone bricks, continuously destroying the structure. Boom. Moments later, the entire overpass was severed in half, collapsing with a thunderous roar. Yet less than 200 meters from the break, the McLaren showed no signs of stopping, flooring the accelerator and roaring forward. Then the McLaren soared into the air. The figure in the driver's seat gently tapped the steering wheel with her knuckles, and the next moment, the steering wheel collapsed inward like quicksand, spreading toward the car body. In less than a second, the entire McLaren disintegrated into a cloud of pixels, enveloping her surroundings. Her figure flew into the air, her tattered black cloak billowing in the wind. The ragged hood slipped off, revealing a cascade of silver hair and an exquisitely beautiful cold face. At that moment, everyone realized that the one driving the McLaren through the mist to confront the divine was actually an 18 or 19-year-old girl. She stood barefoot on the tumultuous sea, her hands tucked into the pockets of her tattered cloak, her silver hair dancing in the storm, and her ice-like eyes calmly gazing at Aces ahead. Aces, dressed in a blue skirt coat, stood opposite the silver-haired girl in the center of the waves, their auras colliding with a thunderous impact. The sixth human powerhouse. Is there really a sixth one? Guanzai, feeling the slightly higher pressure of realm emanating from the girl, showed a look of surprise in his eyes. How come I've never heard of her? In Daxia there were only 5 human powerhouses, and this was a consensus among all. But now, a girl radiating the same level of power as the human powerhouses had emerged from the mist, standing before them, challenging a divine being. Guanzai's gaze turned to Yi Fan, noticing that Yi Fan was not surprised at all, but rather had a hint of a smile. Did he know of her existence? No, perhaps. Her existence itself was something Yi Fan had kept hidden. Just as Guanzai's thoughts were racing, Yi Fan, trapped between 2 massive stones, spoke helplessly. You finally came. I thought you hadn't heard my message. The silver-haired girl glanced at him. At that time I was infiltrating Asgard to gather intelligence. After the radio went off, I was exposed, and since then I've been chased by the gods of Asgard with no time to deal with you. Looks like I interrupted you. You could say that you almost left me permanently in Asgard. She said lightly, but fortunately if you hadn't exposed me, I wouldn't have encountered that Loki agent. I made some good deals with her. Loki agent? Hearing this name, Yi Fan froze in place. Who are you? In the storm, Aces stared into the silver-haired girl's eyes. The silver-haired girl turned to look at her, speaking coldly. My surname is Ji and my name is Jin Yen. Aces frowned slightly. She felt like she had heard this name somewhere before. You should have heard of my name. Jin Yen said, after all, 3 years ago I was the one who blew up the 12 temples of the Egyptian gods. Aces. She remembered who this girl was. 3 years ago, in the human circle left by the Egyptian gods on Earth, The 12 main god temples suddenly exploded, destroying the wishes and incense offerings that had been dedicated to them for hundreds of years, causing the divine power of several gods, already weakened by the arrival of the mist, to plummet once again. After their investigation, they found that those who blew up the temples included some from within the human circle, who were their cultivated seeds of fire, while others came from the mist, their identities unknown. Some were powerless mortals, some were humans with powerful forbidden ruins, and some were strong beings wielding forbidden objects. They called themselves the Shangye Society. And their leader was a girl named Jin Yan. To the 9 Pillars gods, the strength of these people was naturally no different from that of ants. Yet it was precisely this group of ants that had blown up their temples right under their noses. And by the time they intervened, the other party had long since vanished without a trace. They were like a group of terrorists rising from the grassroots. And the silver-haired girl before them was the leader of this group of terrorists. Your strength is decent, but you're not much different from them. Aces pointed at Yi Fan and the others beside her. You cannot defeat me. I don't need to defeat you. Jin Yan spoke calmly, slowly raising her right hand from her pocket, revealing a pixelated black detonator that had somehow appeared in her palm. I received his distress signal 2 days ago. Do you know why I only just arrived? Guess where I was these past 2 days? Aces looked into Jin Yan's calm eyes as if she thought of something, her brow slightly furrowing. Jin Yan smiled slightly. The new temples you built are quite good, especially the foundations. You used the divine bricks from the Sun City, right? They are very solid. Hearing this, Aces's expression gradually darkened. You actually planted bombs in the human circle, again? How did you get in? You don't need to know that. Jin Yan said lightly, but this time the bombs are not only buried in the temples, but also in the residences of those humans you have raised, a total of 72,612 people. These should be your entire source of wishes, right? You want to kill people? Aces's brow furrowed tightly, and the other 9 Pillars gods' expressions instantly darkened to the extreme. Why can't I kill? You are all humans, will you really kill them? Their lives and deaths have nothing to do with me. Jin Yan stood in the storm, her left hand in her pocket and her right hand gripping the detonator, speaking slightly open-mouthed. I have never been a good person, and the Shangye Society is not a symbol of justice. I only know that if you dare to step into Daxia today, the Shangye Society will eradicate all the remaining humans in your human circle. The tattered black cloak rustled in the wind, and a fierce intent gleamed in Jin Yan's eyes.